Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series. I'm coming to you from actually from Connecticut, although you see the Golden Gate Bridge right there. The reason we are paying homage to the Golden Gate Bridge is because A San Francisco Conservative is the title of my friend David Parker's new book. It's his second book after Income and Wealth, and David himself is in San Francisco and joins us now. Welcome, David. How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
Great to see you. Thank you. So good. I'm excited about another conversation. You know, I spent many years as a journalist, 20 years, with CBS News and Good Morning America and CNN and so on. And it's funny, David, you sort of corrected me the other day. You said it's not a deficiency or a flaw in journalism that they don't present the whole historical context of what they're reporting about. How could they? I mean, the journalism is supposed to be the news of the day. What are we, what's happening today? But I guess after all those years of, covering politics and economy and whatnot, I miss the historical context. And that's what I love about your books, is that you provide it. So why don't we start, for those who haven't heard, why you chose to call your book A San Francisco Conservative. Where did that come from?
Well, conservatism is a timeless approach to life, as is liberalism in the American sense. Liberal conservative. Liberal is kind of romantic. It's kind of compassion, and conservative is kind of Apollo, reason. Not so emotional. Both are legitimate. And the way to combine them is probably a solution to most problems. And so I meant San Francisco conservative in the classical sense, of classical liberal, classical conservative, not in the sense of a right wing, not in the sense of the Republican Party or anything that's current, anything so journalistic. I'm speaking in a timeless, and I believe the ancients got things right. 5th century Athens, 1st century Rome, and the Age of Enlightenment, our founding fathers, those were classical arguments. So that's what I'm talking about, as by being conservative. And I even open up my second book, A San Francisco Conservative, with a quote from T.S. Eliot: "Time past, time present, time future, it's the same."
Yeah, no, it's important
Absolutely
to remember. I know you've commented in the past about how the fact that certain economic principles, maybe all economic principles, are recurring should give us some confidence. If people are panicking at the moment, I mean, at the moment, I heard a news report recently that inflation is the highest it's been in many years. But I guess if the economic principles are recurring, maybe we shouldn't panic about that. What are your thoughts?
That would be exactly right. That business cycles are, by definition, cycles. They come and go. And when the economy heats up, inflation heats up. And even if it wasn't inflation, prices are rising because demand is rising. When the economy is heating up, people are working and have money and they're spending, and they're putting pressure on suppliers. They can't meet the demand, and those that can meet the demand are spending more to meet that demand, and so their prices are higher. So that's a natural thing. That's almost not inflation. That's just demand rising. Real inflation is bad, and that comes from Milton Friedman, who says it's printing money. The government, if you're printing money it's not backed with real goods and services, that's just worthless. And so inflation is how that responds. And anybody who's living off their savings, a retired person perhaps, their savings are wiped out when there's inflation. That's why it's really bad. Yeah. All of a sudden their interest they're earning has no value. It doesn't pay for anything. Yeah. You could have assets and you could be wiped out. Excuse me.
Yeah. I'll throw a question at you. I don't think I've ever asked you. I hope you don't mind. But when you talk about what's backing our money, and we talk, certainly we're talking about gold and the Federal Reserve and so on. I've been speaking with a few friends recently, in fact, earlier today, about cryptocurrency. We have a new mayor. I don't live in New York City. I used to live in New York City. Now I'm a little bit north of New York City. But our new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, he's I think one of two prominent mayors in America who said, we're really going to take cryptocurrency seriously. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are. Do you have a position on cryptocurrency?
My position is instinctual. I don't like it. And so I don't really know much about it. And I don't want to know anything about it. It's not timeless. It's not timeless. It's not gold.
Potential for something to go wrong, are you saying?
Yeah, just too much. The earth, land, that's not going anywhere. Gold, we don't use it, but it's not going anywhere. And we've historically have agreed that gold has value, and it still has value. Whenever the economy gets jittery, the price of gold goes up. So that means the world does recognize it. And the US dollar has value, but it's pure trust. But the world trusts the dollar, or it trusts the dollar more than any other currency. It might be the fairest thing to say. They don't, and so those things shouldn't be messed with.
Yeah, yeah.
The dollar shouldn't be allowed to inflate. And there's a good argument to go back to gold. Cryptocurrency has that argument to say we limit the supply. We will never increase the supply of the cryptocurrency. So you cannot have rapid inflation. And that's one reason people are using cryptocurrency. And that's all that I know about it. And I'm not buying it though.
Right. Well, you're smart. You're in good company, I would say. It's funny. A couple of years ago, I heard the great Richard Branson. So Richard Branson was interviewed. A hurricane had just passed over his island, Necker Island. And so they all retreated to the wine cellar, I think it was, but they came out and saw the debris. And so after he talked about how they survived the hurricane, the interviewer, Tim Ferriss, author I like, who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, he said, so Sir Richard, what do you think of cryptocurrency? He said, somebody who's built so many successful businesses, he said, I'm not going there. I'm not getting into something I don't know. I don't understand. I've had my patterns for decades and decades, and all the well. So you're in good company. But I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I want to circle back actually to one of the words you used, compassion. And a lot of the progressive movement in America is very popular now. A lot of attention is being paid to progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and to Senator Bernie Sanders. And some of these progressives seem to want to paint a picture that conservatives lack compassion. Is that true?
Well, they're politicians, and politicians have to say something because they're always running for office. In fact, that's what politicians are saying. They're saying something that they think the crowd wants to hear. If you were in a conservative audience, she might not say that, but she's gambling that there's enough liberals in the United States or in her district. She can be speaking nationally, but politicians are always speaking to their home base. They sound like they're international, but they never forget who their home base is. Yeah. So her home base put her there, and so she's speaking to her home base. And if she believes, and if Bernie Sanders believed what they're saying, that socialism is a good idea, that is very naive. The 20th century, that was the purpose of the 20th century, was to try socialism. Every country, to some extent, including the US, tried some socialism. And it doesn't work. Everything is wrong with it. There's nothing in nature that, there's no model. There's no model.
Another note, I like what you've written about, or I find it very interesting what you've written in both your books about socialism in the countries that have tried it. And often it's not only you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's not only been accompanied by failure in terms of effectiveness, but even loss of life. I mean, you look at Russia, Russia decades ago and so on. I mean, is that correct?
Karl Marx himself said, this is a new idea. I just made it up out of the blue. He says, I like this idea. It appeals to me. So let's try it on the whole world. Let's not try it on one small country and see how it goes. Let's take a huge population and see what happens. And he says, I have no idea if it's going to work or not. And right there, stop. That was 1848, the Communist Manifesto. Immediately, I think 1850, a French politician named Frédéric Bastiat wrote what the counter arguments to Marx's communism was. That his tiny little volume called The Law is still in print. And it's the perfect counter argument. It's just like Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, talks about property. You would think it's written today with the best reasons for private ownership versus social ownership of property. You think he's writing today. That's why I'm a conservative. That all the ideas that are bad are known. So why do we pretend that we don't know them?
Right. It seems like the general public, or at least the voting public, has short attention spans, or short memories, perhaps.
Well, at the moment, it seems that way. Then people, all you have to do is experience a little socialism in your life. If it doesn't work, then you get it right.
Yeah. Well, I spent my childhood basically from age 10 to 17 in Miami, Florida. That was back in the 70s. And as you know, historically, there were so many, we talk about refugees these days, but there were so many refugees from Cuba, and they were all very conservative, speaking of conservatives, because they saw firsthand what was going on in their homeland, but Cuba,
Yeah, I use Cuba as an example that it was a late communist revolution. 1959, not 1917. The first people that do it, well, let's see what happens. But not 50 years later, let's see what happens. We know what happens. And it's sad that it happened to a country like Cuba. Cuba is an entrepreneurial population, and it always has been. If you want to try communism in Latin America, like Nicaragua or Guatemala, but not Cuba. Cuba is an entrepreneurial people. Yeah. Proof is Miami is the Cubans were very successful. Had Cuba not become a communist country, Havana, as opposed to Miami, would be the financial capital of Latin America.
Yeah, interesting. That is
Havana, not Miami.
Yeah. No, that's
so
that. Yeah,
they lost it. So they're living in the Middle Ages in Cuba. The world can look at them. You don't have to look at North Korea or compare East Germany to West Germany. You can look at Cuba. There it is. The people have equality, and by reducing their standard of living so low that everybody's equal.
Yeah.
That's not too appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to take a quick minute to remind everyone, if you're joining us midstream here, this is A San Francisco Conservative. It's the title of our podcast series. Myself, Tom Martin, and my colleague, David Parker, who is the author of the new book titled A San Francisco Conservative and Income and Wealth. And I want to circle back again. I'm not going to drop the progressive topic quite yet. There's a big event in New York City. I'm near New York City, as I've mentioned. Every year, at Lincoln Center, the annual event, fashion and so on. Maybe it's the Fashion Institute Ball, if I remember correctly. But not long ago, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the progressive representative from one of the boroughs here, I think it's Brooklyn, outside of Manhattan, wore a dress painted in red. It looked like blood. I don't think it was actually blood, but she said, "Tax the rich." And I was just curious what your thoughts are, David, about taxing the rich.
It's completely naive. The rich don't pay taxes. You can't tax the rich. Even rich who want to contribute, they feel they have money and they like to help. Their accountants won't let it happen. Because if you're rich, it's complicated. You have lots of money. It's all over and it's held in complicated assets. You can't tax the rich. They know you're coming. She's announcing to them, I'm coming after you. The rich are laughing because you never hear the rich complaining about tax the rich because they're not paying it. They don't care.
Yeah, I notice, you're there in Silicon Valley, the Silicon Valley area. You're not far, I would imagine, from Cupertino, and that beautiful building that Steve Jobs helped design before he passed away. But I notice their headquarters is not in Cupertino, right?
Yeah, they have a beautiful space station, but their Apple is headquartered in Ireland. All their money is on Jersey Island, a tax haven in the English Channel. And many big corporations, whenever a corporation feels it's threatened, the money is taken offshore right away. The tax rate in Ireland when Apple moved there was about 15%. In the US, it was 39%. That's too big a difference. And one of the first things Donald Trump did was lower the corporate tax rate to about 25%. But then he yelled at the corporations, now you bring your money back. That's part of the deal. And even Apple brought some money back, but a token gesture.
Yeah.
So Apple's sitting on 2 or 3 or 400 billion. It's not in the United States, and they're not alone. Jeff Bezos, I believe, hasn't paid tax in 20 years. You can't tax the rich. Stop. Take it off the table. They're can't be done.
Yeah.
It's as if the rich are stupid and don't know the country is coming after them. Rich are not stupid by definition, and yeah,
Right.
don't even try.
Yeah, no, I definitely follow you there. So we just have about 4 or 5 minutes left. I have sort of a big question. I think what our audience will enjoy hearing about for a few minutes. One of the reasons I love your books is because you speak from a number of different perspectives as an entrepreneur, as a lifelong educator, as a lifelong student, even as a jazz musician with improvisation and that qualities like that. You've said you have 150 years experience, right? How do you break that down?
Well, it's actually true. I mean, I have had 4 careers my whole life. I just have kind of worked smart. I didn't work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in each career. I would work I taught inner city public schools. So when I'm talking about education and about low income people, I know what I'm talking about. I walk my students home and tell them to clean up their bedroom. And let's make a desk for you. We're going to do your homework now. So I know how they live. And I grew up with all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds. It's in my blood. It's who I am. So I'm talking from experience, deep experience, 40 years public schools, inner city public schools, plus 10 years as a volunteer on top of that. And then I suppose, in business, I've been in business that long also, 50 years. And I own industrial buildings, office buildings, large residential, small residential, and over a long period of time. I won't say how much I'm worth because it's embarrassing. But I know what I'm talking about. You don't get there without knowing what you're doing. And as a musician, I played in the Berkeley Symphony Orchestra for 20 years. Very serious music. It's called contemporary modern music. Composers like Boulez and Stockhausen and Elliott Carter, who you might not know, but that's contemporary classical music. And that's what we played. Very serious stuff. We recorded at Lucas Studios in Skywalker Ranch. And then I switched to jazz and got very serious about it. I have some of the best musicians in San Francisco working with me. They're, in fact, they're all better than I am. And we headlined 2 years in a row the San Francisco's Fillmore Jazz Festival, a very serious jazz group. And then my writing is not also serious. After college, after a master's degree in music, I went back and got a master's degree in economics and have not stopped. I have about 35,000 hours of very serious annotated study in political economy. So I know what I'm talking about there also. When I write, I give sources for everything I say, including my own personal experience. That's what makes my books a little bit interesting. They're coming from a business person talking about political economy in a scholarly way, not casual. They're not casual books, but they're interesting. Would be a good word for it. So all these things, I know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. No, I would say, I think you're being modest. They're more than a little bit interesting. It's, so many books about economy or political economy are written by professors, and okay, they have tenure. They've been on a college campus for 30 years, 40 years, but are they really out there in the trenches? You talked about your work in the property field and so on. And even I would imagine having the instincts or the, developed mind of a musician for versatility and improvisation and fluidity and that kind of thing. It's very, your books are very unique, which is,
thanks.
I really like them. Yeah.
I'm compelled to write a little bit because I believe that when I write an academic, just a short little letter responding to something they did, a book they wrote or something they said, very rarely do they write me back because I hit them right where it hurts a little bit. I'm saying what they're not saying, because their academics are writing to fellow academics. They're not writing to the public.
Right.
And they never get criticism from somebody who's in business or somebody who has deep experience. It's a very small circle, and their thumbs are not on the pulse of the economy.
Right. They're filling a quota of have X papers published per year, so they get tenure or something like that.
Yeah, and they have their own publishing companies. That's how they do that. Professors have to publish once or twice every few years. They have to publish something, and they do. They have publishing companies for professors like that. They promise to publish them. It's
and
a joke.
By the way, if out there in our audience, you're an academic or an economist with a university, we'd like to hear from you. David, I think you said in our future episodes, you'd like to include comments from others and have a little more conversation. Is that right?
Yeah.
So we invite that, but I think
Bring
we're
it
out
on. Bring it on.
Bring it on, as Muhammad Ali once said, or something, right?
Come on down. All right.
But I think we're out of time for this episode. I will remind all of you to please purchase a copy of David's two books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. You can learn more about them on his website, which is davidparkeressays.com. You can also read about and purchase them from Amazon, great place to find these two books. And we will meet again on our next episode. So thank you very much.
Thank you.